Hello and welcome to Dateline New Haven.
Did you forget?
I'm Paul Bass, inviting you to look behind the headlines on the stories that make New Haven tick. And it's Pundit Thursday.
You almost said
And the
it.
leading
Getting better.
minds of New Haven journalism. And your co-host scrambling to keep up with them. Go over the headlines of the week and the true story behind them. Say good morning to Babs Rawls-Ivy, the editor of the Inner City News and host of Love Babs, Love Talk,
Woo-hoo.
keeper of the porch.
Hello. I know.
And veteran journalist and mentor of the
Keeper
next
of the
generation,
porch.
Markeisha Ricks,
I like this. You should get a shirt that says "Keeper of the Porch."
and Lucy Gelman, editor of Arts Paper.
Hey, hey.
Good morning, everyone.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Is it morning?
Nope.
Nope, it's officially afternoon.
I got a really happy quote to start out to ask you who said this in a news story. Ready? Quote, "This looks really bad."
I thought it was a happy quote.
I was being stupid humor.
I mean, like, probably a lot of people said that in the past couple of weeks.
I'll give you a
what
hint.
though? The
Her
heat,
first-
the monkeypox, COVID,
Her first name
This
is Yesenia.
administration, what?
Yesenia.
Rivera?
Yes.
Yes.
What is her job?
I don't know her. So.
Is it BOE, right?
She's the president of the Board of
Yeah.
Education.
Oh, I didn't
so
know
the
the
that.
Board of
math
Education is
and
so
reading?
quiet that I didn't know that.
And
Is this a math and reading thing?
It is. She was reacting to the latest statistics about how we're reading in New Haven. 84%
Oh, don't please.
of third graders are reading below grade level.
But we're not willing to
84%.
try the new literacy strategy.
Which is
that
really
right?
the old
literacy.
strategy.
I was gonna say, which is really the old strategy, right?
Oh, you mean like phonics?
Yeah. So this is a big deal. There's a crisis in reading because there was discussed at the Board
Why
of Ed
is there
meeting.
crises in reading?
Maya
There's
McFadden
always
was
a
covering the
crisis in
meeting.
reading.
Yeah.
Mr. David Bustamante, who's a Board of Ed member, spoke about how classmates in high school cannot sound out basic words.
Maya
Like-
did a great job
Yeah.
reporting this article.
That's a reading is in crisis.
You know how they taught slaves how to read?
How?
Sounding out the damn letters.
So there's a whole controversy going on. So Reverend Boise Kimber, who for some reason since Justin Ellicker became mayor and tried to sideline Boise Kimber and in the process made him more relevant than he's been in 40 years in New Haven because he's the only one saying things that need to be said, whatever the motivations. He's saying, why aren't we paying attention to reading? Why? There's a crisis. How can you guys still have your job after all this? So that was a press conference following that. Just like with the police chief. How can we have a police chief who's like just wants to bring us back to 1979? Gerald Hampton says the real problem with the Board of Education is not much teaching going on there. They prepare for tests. Thank you, Gerald, for listening. and
I
voting.
don't think that's fair to teachers.
Oh, teachers hate teaching to the test.
I know.
They hate
No,
it.
that's what I mean. What I mean is I don't think that common.
He's not saying that's the teacher's fault.
Yeah.
Saying that. But here's the thing that's striking to me. So the only person who's really speaking up about this is Boise Kimber, Reverend in New Hallville, right? And he's mad because he had an after-school reading program that the mayor won't give money to because there's a Board of Ed member named Ed Joyner who doesn't like being criticized, and Boise Kimber's criticizing that he's supervising his own daughter. So it's all this kind of like mess, right? What about reading? So Boise Kimber says the one thing that needs to be said. What about the reading? This is a crisis. Do something. He didn't get in the weeds. And like we don't like getting in the weeds, and there's a lot of stuff. Babs said this morning, I don't want to get into the weeds. Just teach him how to read. But he didn't weigh in. Our reporter asked Kimber what I think might be the central question. Are we teaching them wrong? Because we had a hearing of the Board of Alders that was boycotted by the Board of Ed. The Education Committee brought in people from Brownsville and other cities that have just as little money as we do. They turned around the numbers by going with what is the latest fad based on 20 years of brain research that says for about 50 years we had decided we have to try all different ways to try to teach people to read because kids are different. Some kids, they could teach them to sound out the words. Other kids look at a picture to get a hint. Other kids should look at what a word looks like and guess it that way. So the brain research apparently over and over was saying you're actually hurting the kid's ability to read, except for a small subset, very small subset. If you're teaching them to try to look at what a word looks like or a picture, because they're actually not developing the skills to learn how to figure out what words are. So it's not that everyone says phonics and only phonics, but we've gone way away from phonics as being a major part where you sound out the words. So the people, the gerontocracy that runs our country, including me and the people of the Board of Ed, they're invested in like their whole career was we got to teach all these different ways because kids are different. And by the way, that's racist if you think they all learn the same way. It turns out one of the reasons we have this huge racial achievement gap is because cities like New Haven, with a high proportion of minority students, are teaching them wrong. That's the theory. So they're digging in New Haven. There was a state law introduced by an African-American woman from Stanford, promoted by Gary Winfield, who's been promoting this issue 10 years, about going back to a more phonics space. They call it structured literacy rather than balanced literacy. We're the holdouts. Arlene Tracy, superintendent, said we're not going to be bullied into this. This is the new fad. It works just well for us. And other people saying it didn't work just well because no one's learning to read. So that's a fight going on right now.
I don't.
That's the fight going on. But the people even raising the question, like Kimber, didn't even know what the question meant.
Does anybody
Maya
care
Fadden
that
said-
kids are not reading? I'm just trying to.
Because it would seem like, I think, to Babs' like frustration, because I feel it, which is that like, okay, you changed to do this thing because you're like, I don't want to be racist about how we teach kids how to read, right? So we want to respect the fact that people learn all kinds
And
of
not
ways.
just race, all kids.
I know,
yeah.
but I'm going with what you said earlier, which is like all kinds of kids are different. But also like now this, like if the research is saying, actually we were wrong about that, like why can't we just do the thing that needs to be done? And I don't care if you teach more phonics and then still teach the same way. Like, do both. I don't know.
Yeah,
But
like,
Lucy
like,
Hawkins is the
why
woman
is it
who...
an and? Can
Lucy-
you do
Like,
and?
why-
Well, but it's
like,
how much. It's the
why-
formula. It's the formula. They're saying that if you teach them that other way, it actually makes it harder for them to read.
This is how I learned, and I talked about this on my show. Really, every letter has a sound, 2 sounds actually, and when you put 2 letters or 3 letters together, they make a different sound. That's how I learned. I don't understand why this is challenging.
I think it's because people our age have a hard time changing. So Lucy Hawkins is a naval woman who built her whole career. She's a Columbia University educator. Her whole career on pioneering balanced
But
literacy.
she's the one who said she was wrong. Right?
She said, I've been looking at these studies. I was wrong. Tens of thousands of schools.
so people are arguing with her that she's
10,000
not wrong?
Tens of thousands of districts in the country use
Just
her
our
curriculum.
Just our BOE.
So what do we do about how we get past this, folks?
I don't know how to tell people who stake their career on doing a thing a particular way and gotten lots of accolades for doing that. To okay, you were wrong. Like that was then, this is now. Other than, is there something that's going to make them like, because if they can just walk away from it and say we're just not going to do it, then that's a problem. Somebody's head's got to roll, right? Like we have to find somebody else to do the thing.
Well, let's
because
look
if
at the
that's not the thing
politics.
that works, we can't keep going down the same path, period.
Well, the mayor, Justin Elicker, was asked by Maya McFadden what he thinks about this. And instead of answering the question about the reading,
He said he's going to have a meeting so we
said,
can talk
no,
about
he said
it.
we need a lot more money. This is after a year we got $50 million extra for education, actually $100 million in pandemic
If he
relief.
stayed out of bars a little bit more.
And
a
after
little
his
more-
own city, they brought
This just
educators
goes
from
back
poor
though
cities.
to my whole problem with boards of education and why we don't give more teachers, like the teachers on the ground. I would like to hear from teachers, people who are in the
We're hearing
classroom.
from teachers.
Because if teachers are saying, yeah, we realized long ago that this isn't working and that we should have been doing something different, but people above us won't stop doing the thing, I think we need to listen to that.
Some teachers we did listen to, they spoke up, Amber Moy and some others at Barnard School. They did an experiment with the...
Where it worked.
And
It
it worked.
worked, so they all got reassigned, including the principal.
Oh my God! What?
So there's politics.
To
So
me, that is at the level of the Atlanta teachers who
Yes.
were like waiting the test, like basically giving
Yeah.
the kids the answers so they can meet the requirements.
So the
Yeah.
That's a
So
disservice.
the mayor
to
now
kids,
owns the Board of Ed.
period.
He didn't his first term. He now has appointed a majority of the Board of Ed. He's very close to Ed Joyner on the Board of Ed, who's the single
Who helped
loudest
him get
voice against
elected.
this, who's the number one black supporter of his first campaign. Let's not forget this. He's the guy, the loudest voice against making this change. He's very tight with Arlene Tracy. He has a majority. So his first term, he said, it's not my fault the schools stay closed. I don't have a majority. He has a majority now. What would make him have to answer and not just say we need more money? To take a stand on this balanced literacy versus
Somebody
structured
should run
literacy.
against him on the education thing, even if they don't win. Like, just make
Oh,
the issue.
there's a laundry list of things that people could run against.
Because if that's what it's going to take to actually get him to do the thing.
Is his kids
So
reading
just do
on
that.
grade level?
I'll bet
Like
they
so.
I'm just asking. I'm asking
no.
for my neighbors
I would
in New
I would have
Orleans.
bet on the fact that his wife is super smart. They are probably reading high above
Yeah.
grade level. Probably pretty talented.
Can we get them
little
to
kids.
care about the other kids in this city?
It's just so frustrating. It's just frustrating to me because if you cannot read, I mean, reading is the building block for everything. Like,
If
for
you cannot
everything.
read,
If
you already
cannot
know
read-
they'll build
There's a
enough beds
jail
for you.
Yes,
cell for
that's
you.
right. That's right.
In third grade, that is that
That's
is the
the
jump
litmus
off point.
test.
So why are we playing at this? We
'Cause
know
kids'
this.
politics
And we
come before
know,
kids.
and we know what's supposed to work.
The
right?
mayor has a political relationship with the people who are stopping this and making us the
Let me
holdouts
tell
in
you.
the
Let me
state.
tell you where I see this going. If we don't fix this, you know how we're just closing all these prisons now and the numbers are
We'll be
down.
opening more.
In a decade, we will be back at high numbers of children. The school to prison pipeline will be open yet again, and we'll be back in this place a generation from now talking about, well, we would have just taught kids to read the way we know to teach kids to read.
And it sounds like what needs to happen is that
This
also
is
we need
so-
to make this politically consequential. I don't know how we do that, but it needs to be politically consequential. Ed Joyner's an elected official. He's not appointed. He's elected. So who's running against Ed Joyner?
Nobody ever does.
Well, they should. Someone should run against every last one
Actually,
of them.
Amber
that could
Moy,
be.
who's one of the teachers spoke about this, did have a campaign. It didn't get super far, and she called it off.
I
Hey,
think
Amber,
it's
come to the
probably-
campaign school. We got
Oh,
you.
maybe that'll be different. So maybe next time she can
We
run.
got you.
But I think it's also like
Because
in
I'm tired, right? Like I'm tired. I'm tired of like this idea that like again to Babs's point that like this is like do the thing.
yeah, we know what works.
We know what works. Do the thing. If you don't want to do the thing, get out of the way of the people who want to do the thing.
Yeah.
Like I'm tired of that.
Yeah.
That's what's exhausting to me about the current political structure. Like if you don't want to do the thing, please go home. Other people want to do the thing.
Take your little awards and
And
whatever
go on.
accolades and go on and retire
And go on
or
and
whatever.
retire. Get out the
and
way.
Get out the way.
And you heard that first.
That's
On
right.
Pundit
I'm exhausted of
Thursday,
it.
WNHH FM. We have smelling salts and other aids for people who are
Salts.
exhausted and hunched over because we have 45 more minutes here on WNHH.
I'm not that kind of
103.5.
exhausted. I'm the
It's like
Spiritually.
annoyingly
existentially, yeah.
exhausted. I'm the
Quote, who said this?
Uh-oh.
Ready? Lucy's going to know this immediately.
I'm not.
Babs might. Oh, you just want the pressure off because then if you know it, then you will not live up.
She
So it's
don't
no
know it.
biggie.
It's fine.
Catch!
Oh,
Catch.
so
Someone said that someone
was a
else.
quote of a
someone
quote,
said,
right?
Yeah,
The-
which may or may not have been accurate. Quote.
so Ray Tennant's lawyer,
Ray Tennant.
did he say it?
He said that's what he said
Okay.
when he sent
So
Oh,
his,
when he
just
threw the
quoting himself.
aerosol
and sent
can
his
at
wife
his
to the
wife.
hospital.
Yeah.
He said he wasn't fighting. He wasn't trying to hurt her. This is the top cop in Dixwell who had a SWAT team come and seal off the East Shore when he's threatened to shoot up the neighborhood and had a loaded AR-15 ready to go. Had 3 incidents in just a few weeks of allegedly beating up his wife. He was arrested and he turned down a plea deal because he wants to be exonerated. Norm Pattis wouldn't keep representing him because he thought he should take the plea deal. So he gets Richard Silverstein, who will go for broke. He's a lawyer. He'll do like, okay, then he'll just try anything. And Ray Tennant prevailed and got all the serious charges dismissed against him because he told his version of the story. His wife's story is that he was
And-
freaking out because there were child welfare people coming to check in because of abuse going on in the house, and there was a plan for the wife to leave. And then he's accusing her of infidelity. So he gets really mad, and she says threw this Lysol can at him and injured her. And then there was all these testimony about how all this stuff that was going on, including the phone, taking away his sort of classic domestic abuse. He testifies, and he says, "Oh, I'm so big, and I got all these guns and muscles. If I really wanted to hurt her, I've got to tell you, she sure would have been hurt," which is like somehow persuasive to the
seems
jury.
like
And he
wild.
said his version is that he just said, "Oh, here, catch. I was throwing a Lysol can to you.
No.
Here, catch." The jury thought that they couldn't tell whom to believe. It wasn't just men on the jury. They
No, there were
couldn't
some
tell whom
health-
to believe, so they
self-hating
let him
women on
off.
the jury too.
Babs has a long history working with domestic violence, victims of domestic violence. What were you thinking about all this? I know it's tough for you because you know the people, Babs.
They are personal friends of mine, and I've known them even before they were married. I knew them before they had children. I knew when they were just dating, and when she was coming back and forth to Connecticut from Pennsylvania. What people don't understand about domestic violence, they always think that if you're in that situation, why don't you just get out? And so it's always whoever's being abused. It's always on their fault. And it's almost like saying, because you stay, you're asking for this abuse. That's usually how. So when people hear this stuff in the jury, what they think is, oh, if this was me, I would just leave. So they project their own, what they think they might do in
and
that
it's back to the
situation.
research because we now know for decades a lot of women stay in tough situations for a whole variety of psychological
Well,
reasons.
it's not easy for women to just leave. There's a whole lot of things that got to happen before you could leave, right?
And
It's
she
not
had a
like your
plan.
house-
She was going to leave the next day. She had a plan for when her husband
Yes.
had a trip
But you
planned
have
for
to,
Philly.
You have to understand money and resources and who do you tell and where do you go and And all of those kinds of things and they have small children. So it's not easy to just
Go.
No, you can't just go.
You have to have
Yeah.
a plan. We used to tell women you always have to have a plan. Don't be telling people your plan, but have a
Yeah.
plan so that you can get out of a
So she
situation.
had a plan. She was one day away.
But to the jury's point, like, and to what Babs just said, what could be going on in the mind of the jurors? Well, like that could sound reasonable to them, to like the idea that like if the prevailing thought process is if I were in that situation, I would have just left. And they're putting themselves in the people's shoes as opposed to being like, the facts of the matter are this. They're actually probably putting like, oh, if I'd been in that's like, oh, he really is a big guy. He could have hurt. Like if I were in that situation, he could have hurt me. He probably wasn't trying to hurt me if he threw. Like I could see people rationalizing that.
Yeah, the
way.
attorney was effective, Rick Silverstein. He said,
Yeah.
you have no other firsthand evidence but the woman and the man. So you have he
Like
said,
it's-
she said. And he said he misused a Jewish scriptural statement. He said in the Talmud, actually, that's not scripture. They say that you need to have more than one witness to a crime. But that's not any crime. That's before you put a person to death. They were trying to stop the rabbis a couple thousand years ago, the kind of wanton
And is the attorney
killing people.
Jewish?
Yeah.
So people are going to take his word for it
Yeah.
if they're not Jewish.
But they don't mean
Right.
that you just let some guy walk off.
But again, if the other attorney isn't savvy enough to say, hey.
Oh, the state's attorneys deal with cops, right? That's their people, and they wanted to pursue this case, but they clearly, at least I was reading Tom Breen's great
They don't want
coverage.
to throw him under the.
It
under
didn't
the jail.
seem like a
They're like, we
mismatch.
just want to
No.
make sure you're punished.
I mean, it's just classic domestic violence stuff.
Yeah.
Like women
Yeah.
don't ever win. Just like rape cases, women don't walk away winning. There's no winning in any of this.
Mm-mm.
You know, and definitely no justice.
No.
And they like to side with men. I that's just the reality. Men could beat women all day and night and get away with it.
Yeah, and
you still
we're
could
and-
legally beat your wife. That used to be a thing.
right, and we're in a country that does not believe women. It does not believe mothers. It disempowers, women.
All of
mothers.
that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cheer thought on Thursday Pundits, Dateline New Haven, WNHH FM with Babs Rawls, Ivy, Lucy Gilman, and Markeisha Ricks. Many people think it's scary. Who said this? Especially kids who grow up inside on computers. We just want to make it loved by all.
I don't know what that is.
Is this the basketball tournament?
Nope.
No,
No.
I was
it a
just
park?
thinking of kids going outside.
It's some
Bing.
kind of park.
Oh,
Yes.
the bridge.
Markeisha's got it. Yes. Yes, Nancy. I mean, Lucy always gets
Nancy.
in the
Bridge.
end.
Nancy.
Is that the
No.
bridge in Westville?
I'll
Nan,
respond to
Nan, I'm
any
saying
name.
Nancy,
It's okay.
Nan Bartow.
Nan Bartow.
Was the one who's,
Oh,
she's one of the
yeah.
nature people where you
She
live.
used to be my
Yeah,
neighbor.
And she
right
was
near
there with
Beverly
her
Hills.
granddaughter.
She was a great there.
Oh,
They
that's
they
precious.
restored a footbridge in the woods near McConaughey Terrace between Valley Street and Whaley. Sir, where Tommy K's was the marijuana dispensary. You go through the woods
yeah,
there.
yeah.
Go through the woods there. There's some wooded area, and then you can go into West Rock Park, into West Rock. And it's really nice, but people had to stop their hikes and go elsewhere because the bridge was
Was
broken.
out.
They did a really nice job in building it so it wouldn't
Oh,
corrode.
I love that.
And they had a
I'm gonna
nice,
check that out.
happy ceremony by that. New Haven. So many good things happen in New Haven.
That's a good thing.
That is a good thing.
Is
I
this
tell
a-
people all the time, like we have the best of so many worlds. We can go to the beach, we can go hiking, we can do city things.
We have
It's a good
beautiful
time.
parks.
We really do.
They're
Yeah,
We
amazing
really do.
parks.
Shouts out to all the people who help maintain
Yes.
parks.
Yes.
And if you haven't
Boo
been
hiss
to
to the
the
people who do not maintain parks.
and if you
Put
haven't
your
gone
stuff
to
in the
the
trash.
Yes,
to
that's
the
right.
Party Rose Garden, you are really missing this
Oh my
beautiful treat.
gosh.
That's a special spot.
I love that place.
There's
It's
so
my
many
favorite
special
place.
spots all over. our
There
city.
are.
It's so
Mhm.
nice.
So is this good news? I don't know. Let me see what you think.
Must mean it's bad news. It must mean it's bad news.
Actually, not sure. I'm
This is
curious
about
what you
reading
think.
again.
Please don't let
Quote.
it be about reading.
Who said this? Quote, we're really open to what you think. At the end of the day, if the community says we don't want it, we won't do it.
Is it the App Center?
It wasn't Justin.
Yes, it was Justin.
Well,
Welker.
really?
What are you talking about? Bicycle lanes or something? What?
Nope.
What?
He's talking about the former state welfare building on Bassett Street.
Oh.
Now, that's been empty for years, and, the hope was, it was a really cool plan drawn up by the Hart
Yep.
administration, but it just didn't happen. The money wasn't there. They were going to do a worker-owned co-op laundry. So now they're going, what do we do with the building? So Adult Ed right
Oh,
now has
yeah,
a
Adult Ed's
terrible
looking at
lease on the boulevard. They got a really bad landlord, jack up the rent. The conditions
It's
are
also
bad.
not a great location.
No,
yeah,
it's a terrible location.
So they're thinking, let's go right in the community. So some people like the idea because they're saying,
Who
this
doesn't
is,
like this
well,
idea?
because they're always saying, like, what do you do with a big building that's right by the trail? Something that builds up and empowers the community. So some people are saying, you always say what you want, but you can't always get exactly what kind of
Right.
business you want because it might not have the money or the ability. There's a
Right.
reason buildings are vacant. So they're saying that some people are saying we want stuff that creates opportunity empowerment. Elliker wasn't pushing it, but he's saying I happen to agree with the proposal. And Devin Avshalom Smith, the alder, agree with the proposal because they say this is in fact what gets you the opportunity. Adult basic ed is pretty basic, pretty core, giving opportunity to people who
Yeah.
didn't make it through high school and then they make it through and they can get good jobs. And
So who doesn't want it?
the neighborhood was a little mixed. They weren't shooting it down.
Okay.
Well,
Anyway.
you know what it is. They want some other things too, and this seems to have taken a priority over what they wanted in terms of a center that can
Youth
take
center. Everyone's supposed to youth
a
center.
youth center, but a youth center that does double duty for the community
Yeah.
Yeah.
in other ways. So I don't think people are against educating people.
Is there
course
a
not.
way it sounds like that's something that could be both,
Like
right?
part of it, yeah.
Adult ed needs new space, period. Like that just needs to happen. But also like could there not be also room for this other community if it's a big building? Is it big enough?
I don't know. It's a good question, Marquisha. And also there's the new Q House, not super far. There used
But
to be the
it's-
New Hallville Teen Center
But I think New
right around
Hallville
the
needs
corner.
something.
Yeah,
in
it deserves its own.
community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder, there was that storefront in Dixville that used to be the teen center, right? Is that still ever open?
Oh, I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Their faces.
Yeah,
Yeah.
on
No, I
Dixon.
don't know. I don't know what that is. I thought it was like a workspace, like a
Yeah,
shared workspace.
It sounds like
or-
something that would do dual duty. I mean, I guess what always is a challenge. Can we use those ARPA funds for it? Like,
Yeah.
what money can we use? Because I
And we
think
did that in the
I mean,
Hill,
it's
the
always
Barbell
the-
Club, Hill Cooperative Youth Services,
Yeah.
which used to be the Q House of the Hill in Trowbridge Square.
That used to be my middle school,
Oh, yeah?
Trowbridge Middle School.
And do you remember Bummy Moore? Who ran the
Yes.
Hill Cooperative Youth
Yes,
Barbell
yes,
Club?
yes,
I was
yes,
there once
yes.
in the 80s when he had his little kids. He used to have a billion kids doing
who
stuff
is Bummy
there.
Moore for those of us
He
who
was
are
Cheryl
not from
Bummy Moore
here?
Thank
ran
you.
the Barbell Club for decades,
Okay.
and he loved kids. And my enduring image of him is standing in the Barbell Club, and every little kid just wanted to touch him.
Mm-hmm.
They'd all come up while he's talking and say, I forget Mr. Moore or whatever. They would just lightly put their finger on his leg or on his shirt.
Must be admitting some kind of energy that they're like, yes, that's good
And
stuff.
and it was
like
such a
Because he was
great
good to
place.
them. He was kind to children.
Yeah.
You know, there are people who are kind to children and treat children like human beings.
So they're using state and ARPA money to
That's lovely.
reopen
And support
that,
reading.
that community center. But the city's
Listen,
going to
I
run
was
it.
on New Haven Read's site. I'm gonna go volunteer.
Are you okay?
So nobody criticizing can be like, you criticize when you do. I'm gonna go volunteer.
Well, I
They-
used to do
yeah.
read aloud day every day.
They
and
need.
then
They have a wait list, so
I
they
ran a
need
whole,
you.
I
New
ran a
Haven
whole
Reach has a wait
Jumpstart
list?
They have a
program.
huge wait list. They have like 300 kids on their wait list.
Oh, kids, not
Not for
tutors.
volunteers. not
No,
people
no,
waiting
they
to
have
be-
they have a huge.
Because this brings me back
wait
to
list
the
of
reading
kids
thing. I
trying
mean,
to read,
the
yeah.
public schools just aren't going to do it. Like, they're great teachers who do
Right.
well, but we need stuff like New Haven Reads.
Well, you
to
know,
have more
listen, I
tutors.
used to run Jumpstart for young children in this city. So I stood in the Oval Office with Bill Clinton talking about reading to children.
Yeah,
So
also,
I just
just-
find this crazy.
And Lucy Gilman puts in
Yeah,
her
she
time.
puts in her time.
Tom Breen,
Does Tom still
Marquisha,
do it?
Yep.
I'm gonna join y'all.
And you get a kid who you talk to and you
I'm enjoying
read
that.
It's
and you help 'em.
special. Yeah, just a quick plug. Like, go volunteer. New
You
Haven
should.
Reads. It's like minimum commitment 1 hour a week.
Yes.
You probably have an hour.
Yeah.
It's
I'm gonna
it's
do it.
so joyful.
And my new gig gives me 40 hours every year to volunteer. So I
No,
can
that's a good thing.
possibly give more than 1 hour.
Yes.
That's good.
So I'm,
Well, there
I'm
you
on.
go. It could be a little upbeat.
Go-
New Haven
go
Reads is a
sign
great
for that.
place.
Yeah, I believe in
'Cause
that.
that's-
Good work.
That's annoying. I'm very annoyed by this reading thing.
Yes.
It's really like as somebody who was either mimicking reading at 3 or was actually reading at 3. It just annoys me.
I was reading at 3, and my children
It
were reading
annoys
too.
me.
So
Like reading is so,
Fundamental having an opportunity.
it is.
and it's not even just fundamental opportunity wise.
soul.
It's a like being able to read is a joyful
It is a joy.
experience.
And it's freedom.
And when you connect to a book, even if you cannot physically go places, when you can read, you
can travel.
You can go places.
Yes.
And I don't want any child to be denied the opportunity to read and experience things because adults are annoying.
And you're
I
right.
don't like that.
That's
Because,
even
you know,
more
when you-
important than the opportunity
Because
thing
their
is the
ego is
long-term.
more important
because when
than
you
a
sit in a
child's
class and
ability
you
to
can't read, you get angry. You get
and
angry.
you tear up the
And-
classroom because
and-
you're like, why are we doing this?
I mean, often what I have seen with some kids at New Haven Reads, and this is very limited, but it's often they feel like it is their personal failing, and that is like freaking
And
heartbreaking.
no child should have
That is
personal
heartbreaking.
failings
That's
in their
absolutely right.
body.
at
right.
that age.
Yeah, right.
That-
And it
that'll come
manifests.
later.
It's physical. Yeah.
I mean, I even think about like my love for reading aloud and wanting to do like voiceover work is because I was the kid, like when it came time to read, I would always volunteer. And, you know, I noticed that my other classmates didn't volunteer. Like it'd be a handful of us, oh, we want to read. And they're like, oh, you've already read, but nobody else is going to volunteer. I loved it.
Yeah, I love
And I
reading
got
too.
opportunities like this opportunity right here to you. Like I got picked to do morning announcements. And I would be going down the hall like a celebrity because they're like, oh my gosh, you did so good reading those announcements. Like I had presence and voice and all that stuff. And I didn't even know
You
what any
do.
of that was.
You do it.
But because people were like, wow, you're so good at reading. And my mother, like she might say no to things. But if we were in the store and I said, Mom, can I get a book? She always said yes. If I wanted to go to the library, yes. Always. So like I just
So we want children to have that. We want children to have that same experience. I understand everything she said because I was that same child.
Oh my
You know,
gosh.
my
I was a kid. My
grandparents
mother
used
would
to-
let me stay up. Like if it was Friday, I started reading a book on Friday. She'd let me stay up all night reading books. And it'd be Sunday. She's like, all right, you gotta get ready for school. But she would make me do my homework on Friday because she knew that's what I was gonna do. Spend all weekend reading. And in fact, it got to the point where like if I got in trouble, I got to choose my punishment. But I couldn't choose being grounded just to be grounded because she knew I would sit in my room and read the entire time. So she's like, nah, we're gonna get into some manual labor. We're gonna go clean out the tool shed but that's how I got into organizing. So that's a whole nother. But my mother
Your mom was awesome.
clever.
Your mom was awesome.
She was clever. She's like, this kid is crazy, clever. But again, I got to find the things that I loved by reading.
And can you imagine a kid that
I got to
that
work in
doesn't
the
get that?
library.
That's sad to me.
I had to work in the library. I had to tutor little kids. I got the chance. I was like, why was I out of class so much? Like I got to be a peer like librarian. So I got to go work in the library, me and this one other girl. And then I don't even know what this program was in our school, but then I would get to go to a first grade or a kindergarten class. And I would get to work with the little kids. They were grooming me
each
to be
one-
a teacher
each
or a
one teach-
librarian.
they
It's
called it
funny I
each
didn't
one
become
teach
any of
one,
those
right?
things. I don't know what it was called.
Each one teach one when I was a kid.
I don't know
I don't
that
know
it
what it was
had,
called
but
either.
I got to get out of class to do those things. So I'm like help kid.
Yes.
I know.
Come on. Whoever's like standing in the way of this, come on.
They need to get out of the way.
Get your ego
mayor, superintendent of
together.
School, board of
That's all I'm
education
gonna
members.
say.
Then,
Like,
then we need.
you've
then we need
had
all
your-
new of that.
Or you've had your moment. You've had your tantrum this summer. Let's get it together. Like you wouldn't stand for this kind of behavior in kids. We can't stand for it in you as adults. And I
No
just
one
don't
can
do it.
ever
And if you need me to
accuse-
say that to your face, I will.
No one will
Like, 'cause
ever
I
accuse.
can't
And I
take it.
stand right there with you.
I can't. Like that. What I want to say to at least 2 out of 3 of those people, not all 3, y'all are better people than this. I believe in you. I believe you're better people than this, and I'd like to see them do better. So get on out of your feelings, and let's get to it.
All right.
It's about more than that. I can't.
So you've heard the marching
I
orders here
can't.
on Pundit Thursday on
my gosh.
WNHH FM 103.5, live streamed at newhavenindependent.org. Markeisha Ricks, Lucy Gelman, Babs Rose Ivy. Nobody
I'm gonna go sign up for New
will
Haven
ever
Reads today
accuse any of
Good.
you of not caring.
because I can't.
Quote, ready?
Yes.
Here's a trick one.
Aren't they all trick ones?
Well, the trick
Oh.
here, I'm going to give you in advance.
I gotta read more closely.
This is
these
2 people. This
independent
is 2
articles.
people.
Clearly.
I'm quoting 2 people here. Ready? Quote.
Are you mashing up this as a remix?
Nope, it's a conversation
All right.
captured on video.
Okay.
Oh,
Can I make you kill me?
What?
oh, I know this
I
story.
don't want to kill you.
This is the police story about
Officer Chad Curry.
yeah.
You know him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Family's house is right by the prison there, the jail, on Whaley.
Mm-hmm.
He's a good cop. He's very good at talking to people. And he was at Bella Vista with a guy with a knife. And it wasn't the kind of thing where he was necessarily going to get hurt,
Mm-hmm.
but it was an old man with a knife. I guess it was like a cop by suicide situation.
Mm-hmm.
And we've had situations like that in New Haven where the officers did not know how to handle it. One guy got killed. This was years back. David Rundlet killed him. It's tough to deal with people with mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we're trying to do this crisis response team thing. Chad Curry talked the guy down, got the knife. It wasn't the hugest thing that ever happened. It wasn't going to be a big tragedy, but it could have gone wrong,
Mhm.
and it went right. And we ran the video. Tom Breen wrote a story about what happened, and the Independent. I say kudos to Chad Curry.
Kudos to Chad Curry.
He's a good cop.
Yeah. That's what we want police
We
to
want more
not
of
kill
that.
people.
And we also, I mean, not for nothing. I don't know that police want to hear this because I'm sure not every situation obviously is going to work out that way. But more cops who are willing to do that, right? Like that's a skill set.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's a skill set. Like I think, some officers probably naturally have that kind of ability
Right, and some don't.
and some
yeah.
don't. But I think if the desire to be a police officer, like you need to look for people who either have it or want that kind of skill, right? Who want to be like, that's the kind of police
Yeah.
officer I want to
And
be.
a couple years.
And we want to elevate those officers. We want them to know, like, we really appreciate what you do and we value that instead of like, the dangerous stuff.
A couple of years ago, it was alleged that we were going to have something called a crisis response team that has like
alleged.
mental health workers go out to some of the calls. Still only be like 10% of the calls,
Is it
but
still alleged?
calls like this. Other cities have got that going.
yeah.
There's a rumor that it might happen at some point, so maybe we won't need those other officers who might not have that
But
training. Maybe
I
get
want the
another cop.
officers because aren't there some officers who are part of those teams?
Yeah.
Okay, I want all officers to want to be a
Well,
part
we
of
used to
those teams
we used
in
to
some
train
way.
them with the LCI
Is my
study
point.
to pair with child psychologists to work with kids who see violence. That's
I want this kind of what I want is training and pairings that suggest to people that this is policing. Like this too is policing, and that because not for nothing, you have people who want to get into uniforms, whether it's military uniforms or policing uniforms, because they want power. They're like, you're going to put a gun in my hand, and it's going to make me powerful.
Like in the Ray Tennant trial, when one of the higher-ranking
Bless you.
detectives was cradling the AR-15 and saying how much he'd like to have one like that.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Like there are people who are like, I just like guns. I want to blow some stuff up. I want to run over somebody with a tank. Like, and people who train the people who do this work see those people. They see them and they need to flag them and say, yeah, no. I don't even want you to be a mall security cop.
That's right.
You need to find another area of work.
Yeah.
Mercenary, I don't know.
You're not
But
going
like
to work
you
at the
don't.
mall?
No. I've seen some
'Cause
things go
malls are
bad
great,
at the mall.
But malls are great settings for dystopian novels. Like where society falls
are
apart, it kind of
dystopian
will happen at the
novels.
mall. Yeah. Okay, quote, who said this? The city gets a bad rap, but it's where my heart is.
Me, I said that. No, I'm kidding.
You did.
You probably did say
I
that
probably
at some
have
point.
said that.
Give you a hint. A neighbor of Babs. Well, not a close neighbor, but a neighborhood neighbor of Babs Rawls.
Oh, is this the guy who was playing the saxophone on his porch?
Nope.
Oh,
there was
there's
somebody?
a guy playing the
Yeah.
saxophone.
And it wasn't
Well,
on my porch?
Not in New Hallville. That was Beaver
Oh.
Hills. Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
West Hazel Street. Tamika Baines grew up in New Hallville. She volunteers baseball coach. She's a behavioral therapist in the public schools.
Yes.
She bought a house
Oh,
through
yeah, yeah,
neighborhood
yeah.
housing
Yes.
services. And she's a new neighbor there. And there's
I
always
love it.
I think it's a pretty blue house.
and so they did a great job. Neighborhood housing services.
I want one of those houses so bad.
They've done a lot in New Hallville because they want to make a difference of a cluster of houses in an area. Like they did a lot near the Ivy Street School on Winchester. What they do is they get an older house, and through using tax credits and philanthropic contributions from
Down
like
to the
banks,
studs, rebuild it.
they can afford to do a nice job of rehabbing and then keep the price low. So then they get working class homeowners, people let's say who work at Yale 35 or something, right? Or someone like this with public schools, often from the neighborhood. So they can afford to buy it, and then they pair it with training in running a house.
I love it.
And that you have enough money up front so you can buy that new boiler when you move in, so you're not going to be one paycheck away from losing a house if the boiler breaks.
Yes.
And it's just such a well thought
I
out
love it.
way.
I just wish they could scale
I
and
know.
get more property like that. The number of people who are waiting to buy a home, they just have to get them and get them rehab. Like,
Well,
it takes
some
a
of the city government have
process.
felt there because the guy who started it is white, Jim Paley. There was a feeling that he was a usurper in New Hallville, and they wanted other groups to get it who didn't necessarily have the same results. I remember going with Delphine Clyburn, who was an alder in New Hallville, and she was always kind of against he's getting too much property. And I went door to door with her when she was trying to get.
Now look who's getting all the property.
right.
Yeah.
I was
They
going to
hate
say,
that
wouldn't you
even
rather
more.
NHS
She was trying to
than-
get neighbors to sign a petition against them getting approval for tax credits because she thought they were getting too much approval. I went
Ouch,
along just trying to
Delphine.
figure out what the argument was. And I have to admit, as an outsider, I was trying to understand because there's enough bad property to go around. But if you fix it up and people of color own it who are from the neighborhood and have the ability to
Like,
build
didn't
up
you
that
get
asset wealth.
essentially what you wanted? And I don't know. I think sometimes there's this positioning, rightly or wrongly, that like, and that some like the getting too much, because obviously he wasn't getting the property for himself. Like there's that, but like because I mean, and this probably is partly true because of whiteness. He has access to things that somebody who was doing his same thing,
no question,
might not have.
No question.
And so
the
it
bank
looks like
was going to give him some of the
right.
yeah.
And so to the neighborhood and Delphine's point, like it would look like that. Oh, even if we had another organization that was doing the exact same thing, if they're bidding for the same house, if that's a perception, and that he gets it 70% of the time or something like that, like he gets it more than somebody who's doing the exact same thing. Or even if it's not just the getting the house, it's getting the resources to do the things that they do more easily, or he's more trusted, then I can see how that it would feel away.
Yeah, like why does he get so much?
I mean,
but
listen.
if at the end of the day is to put people from the neighborhood in housing that they own.
They're a nonprofit too,
I mean,
so he's not
listen,
making any profit.
I like
on
Jim
this.
Paley. I like what they do, but I'm never going to lose sight of that we have seen people come into our neighborhoods and say all kinds of things
Yeah.
and promise all kinds of things. Not just a generation, but for 400 years.
Yeah.
So I understand when people sort of feel some kind of way because this is new and they don't know that there's no track. When he came, he had no track
No, but
record.
by this time there was 40 years.
Well,
of track
but
record.
yeah, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
When white folks come into our neighborhoods, at some point we always believe they're going to turn and it's not going to be what it is.
And
I don't say that to say we should distrust or whatever. I just say let's just
That
hold
the distrust
space
is
for
warranted.
that historical aspect of why sometimes we may not embrace things in our own best interest. Not because we're stupid or not because we don't care,
Or we
but
just
because
don't like white people.
we're just
Because
cautious.
there's a basis for it.
We have a real history with that.
There's a basis.
So,
for
I'm just
Lucy.
saying.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I think also yes, even if there were those 40 years of trust building, Paul, I think that in New Haven, what I've observed as someone so I grew up in Detroit, I've lived here for about 10 years at this point, but I think that mistrust is often earned because when white people are coming into neighborhoods, it's often with very extractive purposes because of the $43 billion bouncy castle that lives in the middle of town. And so like and that is just real, right? Right, like that
I'm
is
sure
I
they
love
appreciate
real.
being called that.
It really is a bouncy castle. When Lucy says that, I really picture all
Yes!
those Gothic buildings, and I picture all these kids like
Hopefully
bouncing.
you won't get any strongly worded emails about poking the bear. That happened to me when I was a reporter.
Oh,
here.
yeah?
I was like, are you serious right now?
Who Oh,
Oh.
okay, yeah, I
was
got
like,
those
really?
too.
I didn't even respond. I was
I
just
got
like,
th- oh my goodness, I want to hear that backstory after that. Okay.
I should have kept that.
Who will say this quote
Uh-oh.
over and over again after there's one more vote at the Board of Alder?
Wait, what?
This is a quote. Who's going to say, quote, person with a disability?
Oh,
Close quote.
Nobody.
Well-
Nobody's gonna say. Or no, that's the first person thing though.
Everybody
Person
in
first thing.
theory, but not the handicap parking signs outside.
You read. That's only been up like 2
Gretchen
hours.
Knopf is my girl, though. I mean, she's really doing cool stuff. I think Babs, you had her on like a year ago?
Yeah, when
So let's tell you
first
what
came.
this is. The city's
She's
about to have a new
awesome.
rule for its laws. Like we changed alder man to alder and alder person. We're changing that. We aren't going to call people handicapped. We're going to call them person with disability. And
Except for the
similar or
signs.
down the line in all city laws, with the exception is Lucy, very close reader. She does live with the person who wrote the article, but still, close
I mean,
reader.
I also am
And she's like, I
a
also read the article.
disabled person. Like, just want to
Or
point
you're a
that
person with disability.
out. Okay, yeah, but I have. You
I was
cannot.
gonna say, do you have feelings?
So
Well,
this is in the
no.
law. This is in the law that if it passes one more vote, our laws will be rewritten and written going forward without the word handicapped, except for parking. And the reason given was that it's kind of a term of art almost. As people recognize it as meaning something, so they want it to work for the person who needs the parking space. Thoughts on that, Lucy?
Oh yeah. Well, as the spokesperson for
You're
all
right.
people with disabilities
What
in
are
the
your
United States.
personal thoughts for yourself?
So I have to say there was this discussion and question around. So in some places you'll see signs that say reserved parking, and it doesn't always specifically say parking reserved for persons
with-
with disabilities.
Right.
And I, for me, if I see a sign that says handicap parking, I do not feel personally offended. I think the person first language is really important. And I think it's something that we should be loud and really proud about and talk about far beyond the Board of Alders. This is something we should be talking about in our classrooms and in our workplaces. But I'm also much more interested in policy. Like, as someone, and whatever. I don't want to get into how there is no hierarchy for how a person can be disabled, because that is a whole other show.
That's interesting.
But for someone who does have somewhat limited mobility, but is like I'm still bipedal, that is a privilege. There are a lot of accessibility issues in New Haven. A lot.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many
I
accessibility
discovered
issues
that
in New
when
Haven.
I was moving around with a cane. I was like, what the
Absolutely.
hell is this?
and so what I am most interested in, and I think what Gretchen Knopf is most interested in, is policy that actually makes this city a livable place for
For
people who
everybody.
have disabilities and for everyone. Because when people with disabilities win, everyone wins.
Yeah.
And she's the new person in oil years took over
Yeah.
Michelle Dupre in charge of
Yeah.
disabilities office
Yeah.
for New Haven.
Absolutely. And I think, anything we do that makes the city more useful to us all.
Because at some
Yes,
point,
absolutely.
we're all going to
Experience
need-
some
We are all
disabilities.
temporarily
Yes.
able-bodied.
We
That
are,
is right.
I like that.
That's-
We're all
that is
temporarily
right.
able-bodied.
Able-bodied, that's good.
And whether we age into it or whether
Right.
surgery or whatever,
something
limbs,
happens.
or something happens.
I think this kind of, and it's probably like an American cultural thing to focus on the people who don't have any disabilities, the people who are young. Like that's all we kind of care about. But you're like, that's not the reality of being human.
Well, but it's also like all of this. I mean, we talked about this 3 weeks ago. All of this lives under the umbrella of white supremacy. Like ableism is tied to white supremacy, and the fact that we do not redistribute resources in this country based on who is most vulnerable.
Absolutely. And to your point, to bridge for the people, because they're going to be people who are really in their feelings about you, saying, how's that even racial at all? And you're
It
like,
is so racial. It is so racial because I will say
because it's based on this idea of what's good for the able-bodied white guy who has
Yeah.
money.
Yeah.
I
Like,
mean, that's
what's good for that guy?
It's
If it's
also-
good for that guy,
And that
who
is the-
cares about everybody
That's
else?
right.
I also
Who's
think
not
about
that
this.
guy?
I
That's
think about
the
this
center of everything.
all the time, right? If I walk into YNHH because I have an appointment with my neurologist, I'm a white woman, so people are more likely to trust me. I am a patient advocate. Or like a patient advocate for myself. English is my first language. I have been at YNHH next to people who have limited mobility, who do not speak English, who do not have access to a translator, right?
And even
So
for
if-
people who do speak English, unless, because I just had to send a message to an attorney. And I know the way that I worded what I wrote is going to be different than someone who doesn't have my level
That's
of
right.
education and command of the
Yeah.
English
That's
right.
language. And I know how to turn on my I'm educated, don't play with me. I know how to turn that on to get results.
That's right.
And it's a code switch, right? But if you don't know how to do that, things go real different for you.
And that's across the board.
That's across the board.
That's in education, because I just had this conversation with somebody. When you're a parent and you got to go to these IEAP meetings, and
If
they
you come in one way,
and
you're
they
gonna get a
sit
different
you
result.
around a table like an inquisition, and if you don't speak the language that they throw at you,
That's
these acronyms and all this other kind
And
of
if
stuff,
you don't come with receipts about, oh well, we've been doing this and we do this, and I know that we have access to this because this is what the law says, you gonna
Yeah.
get
So my answer is yes. I think it's great. I want to see.
see, there's
policy.
levels to this thing.
I want to see people. I want to see people first policy, and not just. I will
Just
say
people first
not-
language.
Not just people first language from the city, right? This is not just a municipal thing. This is a state thing. Our DOT does not give a you know what about folks with disabilities.
facts on facts.
You're listening to Thursday Pundits on Dateline New Haven, and I was curious about something. Who said the following? Quote, Lucy's going to know this right away.
I'm not.
There you go. The pressure's on now. So then if she gets it right, sometimes she was supposed to
I'm
get
gonna
it
get it
right. But if
wrong.
she doesn't, oh man, she was
We
supposed to
should
get it
start
right.
getting we should keep a
I
little
need
scorecard
like
at
a
the bottom.
swear jar, but it's a question
Quote,
jar.
okay,
Yeah.
Lucy will never get this in a million years. Quote,
Definitely gonna get it.
I don't think there should be a concern about the grass because grass does grow in the shade.
Who said that?
Is this about football? No, I don't know what this is about.
This is about something that gets my goat.
Like people mowing their grass, like the city's rules around.
There's an
keeping
apartment
grass cut?
complex in Hamden on Mixed Avenue called
Okay.
Chestnut Hill.
Oh, I know it. I know it.
And they wanted in their parking lot, they wanted a few spaces to be reserved for solar panels so that they could stop. This is on a week. So they came before the zoning board saying, we want permission to have a few parking spaces be for solar panels because, the climate's burning up. It's the same week that we had record temperatures reported all over the country, people dying and all these weather-related events. And they said no because they said they were worried that some of the landscaping might not grow well if solar panels in the way, so they have to go back and come up with a whole new plan.
Come on.
Are we ever going to
This same
just...
grass is burning
Come
up.
on.
This same grass is burning up under the sun because we ain't had rain in like
Well,
3,000
you know,
years.
historically...
Right.
Calm
This is a
down.
That's like
national-
probably
this is a
going to
story in the
burst into
Times.
flame, right?
Yeah, basically.
But it's all these small decisions that a lot of times it's these historical districts all over the country who don't like the look of solar panels.
Listen,
they don't let
they're
people
not
put
going to
on their
like the
house.
look of everything on fire.
That's
Because hot. Like, what is wrong? Y'all gotta
We're just
stop.
we're gonna just extinct ourselves off.
It's like,
this
but
planet.
it's gonna be a pretty death, Babs, and the
Well,
history of it
the
is gonna be
grounds will look
preserved.
good where you drop dead
It'll be
at.
historically
Right.
tasteful according to certain elite tastes.
Ugh.
Okay, quote, who said,
Oh my god.
we have magic soil.
Whoa. They need to talk to the people who want to grow things under the solar panel.
They were saying, by the way, it's not going to affect the grass. But anyway, who says we have magic soil?
Magic.
A
Lizette,
hemp farmer?
Lizette Flores and Liz Johnston, who live on Perkins Street. a
Can I
married
get some of that
couple.
for my plants?
I
They have the
love
most
that
beautiful
story.
garden with both the flowers and
I
the
love it.
vegetables. And they brought some stuff from Puerto Rico that turned out they learned how to grow here.
Nice.
And the hit of the neighbor. And it was interesting. It's the same block as that
Are they in
community garden.
Fairhaven?
Yeah, Perkins Street.
Okay.
It's,
cool.
Their
They're featured on
garden
the front
is
page of the
so
Independent.
beautiful.
Right.
Veggie, fruit trees,
They need to talk to
vines.
these people who don't want the solar panels.
Quote, I'm helping support my family right now. Who said that? The hint, the person wasn't able as much to help support a whole family before that. A 20-year-old barista named Jessica Hay, who works at Graduate New Haven Hotel. You know,
Oh,
they just
they got
got
the
a union.
union.
They got a union that's going to be
Yeah.
on the Unite Here health plans. They're going to have days off now. They can count on job security and
Wow.
working up to
I
$20
love
an
this.
hour.
That's great.
There was no
welcome
fu-
to some freedom.
At first, when the hotel was getting approved, the union delayed it, and they got really mad. This chain came in to upscale the old Dunkin' Chapel, and they
I
were
still
getting
have not been in
stopped.
this place yet. By
Me
the way.
either.
And they were getting fought by the union because some people didn't like the old Dunkin' leaving, but the economics weren't working.
Right.
And they said upscale, whatever. But people were saying the union wanted them to promise they'd have a union before the city
Yeah.
gave them approval, and they didn't. But now, instead of fighting the union, they agreed
They'd
to
agree.
card check neutrality, and there is a union there.
Congratulations.
I am so happy we live in a union city.
Yeah.
I was going
I
to say,
think that's a good thing.
Yeah, we're all in agreement.
Yeah. We're for organized
No hot
labor.
takes.
Here
Yeah,
is
just-
my
that's
favorite.
great.
Okay, I'm not gonna. That would give away too much away, but I think Lucy's gonna. No, not say Lucy. Someone's gonna know what
I've
this is
gotten
right
three
away.
wrong in a row. So
Quote. No, you didn't. You got it first. Okay.
no,
quote.
I got,
$1.1 billion is spent on teaching critical race theory.
Oh, that's from the
Said
debate.
that.
That's from the debate. and-
Republican candidates for U.S. Senate.
Yeah, those crazy.
Now,
cast
I know
of
that people say crazy
crazies.
stuff when they run, but I was at this debate and my jaw dropped. I didn't think you could
I
go
s-
this far. And so this is what this woman claimed is running for U.S. Senate. She's this Trump candidate.
And this is Connecticut.
Leora Levy. She claimed factually.
The Republicans should have just gone and pulled her mic and said, "Girl, sit down."
Here's what
Like,
she claimed. Her claim was that the pandemic relief money that came to Connecticut, Ned Lamont took $1.1 billion of it and spent it on teaching kids critical race theory.
I've just figured my life's work out just now. I'm going to go actually teach critical race theory.
so
Yeah.
afterwards, I actually
but
asked her.
actually,
We
has
had
she
an,
met
Can,
Ned
can we
Lamont?
attach that to reading? Because that's the only way.
That's a good question Lucy had. So we had an opportunity to talk afterwards. With the reporters. I said, I have never heard of any school in Connecticut, public school that teaches
my
critical
first
race
question
theory.
to her would be, what is critical race theory? Who
Ooh.
created it?
Yeah, that's right.
Because you know so much about it. Who created it? What was it designed to
Those are the
do?
questions I should've
Like, I
asked.
would just... Can I go to the next part?
Yes, you're a
Because
reporter there.
I'm sick of it.
So I asked her, I hadn't heard that what schools were teaching this and what program was this, like that this 1.1 billion
Did she give you
came from.
the Marjorie Taylor Greene? I don't actually know this.
No, she
but
said
I'm
our
just
staff's
saying
going to get
stuff.
back to you. So I went to her staff, gave her the card. We never got it back. But someone else told me that we should actually do a story on how great it would be if we actually spent $1.1 billion on critical race theory. I mean, like, what would it
also-
look like? First, I don't know if we'd be able to. That's a heck of a
Can
lot of
the
money.
state of Connecticut hire me as the critical race? Like, we're going to create a little department. It's going to be just me. And I'm going to do a little segment every week about critical race theory. And we're going to put it on public broadcast
I mean,
television.
what gets in my craw? There are so many things here.
Because honestly, people would learn a lot from it, actually.
But
if they knew
but
what it
also
was.
like this is not like when they talk about CRT, they are just talking about wanting to pull like Jerry Craft from the school bookshelves, and that is what gets in my.
And they
and
also- they
everything
also
in
don't
their
wanna
mind
teach
is
people
under
slavery.
CRT.
I know.
And they
It's
also don't
all
want
the
to teach
things that
people
they
about
don't like.
slavery. They don't want to teach people about racism.
No, I know.
And so racism.
It's well, and well, and in good news, thank goodness that
there are no
sir-
black people in America. We're not going to we just gonna act like they just
don't
came here
exist.
as guest workers and
we took good care of them.
we took good care of them, and look, they're thriving.
So what are you saying, Lucy?
I don't.
Oh, what is good news is that CERC, the State Education Resource Center, is getting ready to roll out this high school elective in Black and Latinx studies
Yeah.
in the fall, which is great.
Are they spending $1.1 billion?
No, they're not.
Because I want to find this $1.1
No,
billion.
we should we're that robustly funded.
That was
They
supposed
should
to
be
used for
robustly
COVID
funded.
relief.
Well, what's the point if they can't read it?
I want a Connecticut statewide curriculum
Thank
on
you.
CRT. Yeah, absolutely. And I wanted to have $1 billion.
Yeah,
I sure do.
1.1 billion. Don't forget the 100 million.
1.1.
What is
Okay.
the
I
point if
want-
no one can read any of this stuff? 'Cause-
And I
Right.
want them to pay that point one. That's somebody's salary. That's what I want.
100 million. Okay, so folks.
And I want them to get on TV with like a dashiki and a kufi and talk about critical race theory, because I think that's the only thing that's going to get people's attention. And then we create a little mascot in the same, and we go drumming in white neighborhoods. Yeah.
drumming. I forgot the
'Cause
drumming.
drumming.
Critical race theory
I'm
drumming.
solid.
Tired. And we're going to be in everybody's 4th of July parade. Everybody. Because y'all
Black
are
Jesus.
stupid.
I had another question, but I got to admit, I really want to end on that. Such a great image. So I'll save my question. We don't have to talk about the primaries. We can say
We can
Thank
talk about
No,
the
talk
primary.
about the primaries. They're coming. We want people to know.
Tuesday
August
is-
9th.
12:53.
state
Vote row
treasurer,
C.
state secretary, secretary of state primaries in New Haven has.
And the
Okay.
C sound makes a ka, ka, ka.
Oh, that's row C, Karen Du Bois Walton, right? I got it for state treasurer.
Take your kids to vote and let them read the ballot and explain to them what's on the ballot.
And will there be any drumming?
There might be
Ballot.
drumming.
Will there be any
Let's hope there's
dashikis
drumming.
and the puffy hair?
Ooh, a great resource is Gracie's Corner. She's got the bops and the sounding out.
There you go.
What's Gracie's Corner?
It's this great TV show, which is about like reading and words and stuff. It's great. I love it.
Conjunction Junction, what's your function?
Oh, yes.
Yes. It's like that, but like with a
Listen,
black
Sesame
beat.
Street taught us how to read, right?
Gracie's Corner has a R&B vibe.
Oh, okay.
It's rap. It's vibe. The kids will love it.
Gracie's Corner.
Gracie's Corner.
So maybe so New Haven schools won't do it. We'll get Gracie's Corner, New Haven reads, and we're on track.
We're gonna fix it because apparently somebody else ain't gonna fix it.
Yeah, we gotta fix this.
But we did fix most things on Thursday Pundits today on Dateline New Haven. I'll say it right. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Thanks to Nora Grace Flood,
Yay!
who's
Hey, Nora!
Thank you, Nora.
hitting it out of the park,
We love you, Nora.
filling in for Harry Droz
Go
as the
Nora.
station manager today.
High five, Nora.
Go
We
Nora.
love Nora. And we also love the best pundits in the building, in the business. Babs Rawls-Ivy, Markeisha Ricks, and Lucy Gill.
All right.
So thanks for joining
Hey,
us,
Andrew
folks.
Gearing, because I know you're listening.
This is Paul Bass. Thanks for listening today. I'm gonna invite you.
What you
We're
doing
going to take it
about?
out with the Afro-Semitic Experience, performing I Wish I Knew How It Would Feel to Be Free from the group CD, A Plea for Peace. This is Paul Bass inviting you to fly free with us all day, all night, and all weekend long on WNHH, New Haven's home for community radio.